The 96-year-old veteran's hands trembled so badly he could barely hold the parking ticket. His $150 fine meant choosing between heart medication or eating for 2 weeks. James Sullivan sat in a wheelchair before Judge Frank Caprio, an oxygen tank hissing beside him. The World War II hero who'd stormed Omaha Beach on D-Day was now fighting a different battle. And nobody in that Providence courtroom knew the devastating truth about why he'd parked illegally at the VA hospital. If you believe our heroes deserve better than this, subscribe now. This new channel fights for stories like James's that desperately need to be heard. The clerk read the violation. June 15th, 2:17 p.m. Unauthorized parking in disabled zone. VA Hospital, Providence. Fine, $150. Simple, straightforward, case closed. But the prosecutor hadn't read what happened in those parking lot security cameras. The footage would change everything. Judge Caprio looked at the frail man before him. Purple heart medal pinned to his worn jacket. Fingers twisted with arthritis. Breathing labored, even with oxygen flowing. Mr. Sullivan, can you tell me what happened that day? The veteran's voice barely rose above a whisper. Your Honor, I had a routine appointment. My heart doctor. I've been going every month for 3 years. He paused, struggling for breath. I parked in my usual spot, started walking to the entrance. His 68-year-old son, Michael Sullivan, stood beside the wheelchair. Vietnam veteran himself. 2 generations of service. 2 generations now facing an impossible system. Michael's jaw clenched as he watched his father struggle to speak. Then what happened, sir? Judge Caprio leaned forward. Pain. James's eyes closed. Like someone stabbed me in the chest. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't see straight. My car was 40 feet away. The disabled spot was right there, 5 feet from the entrance. His voice cracked. I thought I was dying, Your Honor. You could hear the courtroom hold its breath, every person imagining their own grandfather in that moment. Their own father clutching his chest in a parking lot. But here's what nobody knew yet. What the parking enforcement officer never checked. What would expose a systemic failure that had affected hundreds of veterans at that very hospital. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, Mr. Sullivan didn't have a disabled parking placard displayed. Our officer followed proper protocol. The fine is justified. Michael Sullivan's hand tightened on his father's shoulder. His voice shook with barely controlled rage. Protocol? My father was having a heart attack. The timeline shows, the prosecutor continued, flipping through papers, that Mr. Sullivan parked at 2:17 p.m. The hospital has security footage. He walked, not ran, into the building. If this was truly an emergency, I collapsed. James interrupted, each word an effort. 32 steps from my car. I counted them once. That day, I made it 19 steps. Fell on my face. Blood everywhere. His hand touched his forehead where a scar was still visible. Paramedics found me unconscious by the automatic doors. The prosecutor's papers stopped rustling. The courtroom fell silent. The hospital records. Michael pulled out a folder with shaking hands. Show my father was admitted at 2:23 p.m. Code blue, full cardiac arrest. They shocked his heart 4 times. 4 times he died and came back. His voice broke. While he was fighting for his life in the ICU, your parking officer was writing a ticket and putting it on his windshield. Judge Caprio's expression hardened. When did this ticket get issued? 2:47 p.m., the prosecutor said quietly. 30 minutes after the initial parking. My father was on an operating table, Michael said. They were cracking open his chest, and someone was writing him a ticket for illegal parking. Listen carefully to what happened next, because what Judge Caprio discovered would reveal something far worse than one unfair ticket. The judge turned to his computer, typed something. His face changed. "Mr. Sullivan, do you have a disabled parking permit?" "Yes, Your Honor." James fumbled in his pocket, pulled out a blue placard. "Valid through December. I've had one for 4 years, since my stroke." "Was it displayed in your vehicle that day?" "No, sir." James looked down. "I keep it in my glove box. When the pain hit, when I couldn't breathe, I needed to get inside. I forgot everything except getting help." The prosecutor shifted uncomfortably. "Your Honor, the law requires compassion." Judge Caprio's voice cut through the courtroom like a blade. "This man has a valid permit. He was experiencing a medical emergency. He parked in a disabled spot because he is disabled. And you want to fine him?" But the judge wasn't done. He pulled up something on his screen. According to VA hospital records, there were 17 parking violations issued on June 15th alone, all in the hour between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. He looked directly at the prosecutor. "Your parking enforcement officer was having a productive day, wasn't he?" "I don't understand the relevance." "The relevance," Judge Caprio's voice dropped to almost a whisper, "is that this is the 40th complaint I've seen from the VA hospital parking lot in 6 months. Veterans, sick veterans, dying veterans, all getting tickets while seeking medical care. You would have felt the anger building in that room, the injustice of it burning in every chest." Michael's voice shook. "Your Honor, my father served in World War II. He was 19 years old when he landed at Normandy. June 6th, 1944. First wave, Omaha Beach. He had to stop, breathe. He watched his best friend die beside him. Watched boys, just kids really, cut down by machine gun fire. Watched the water turn red." James's eyes were distant, seeing things no one should ever see. "We lost 2,000 men that day. 2,000. I still hear them screaming. Every night, Your Honor. Every single night for 79 years. The courtroom was absolutely still. Not a cough, not a shuffle. Just the quiet hiss of oxygen flowing into an old soldier's lungs. He came home," Michael continued, "and he never asked for anything, never complained. Worked as a machinist for 43 years, raised 4 kids, paid his taxes. When his factory closed, he didn't ask for handouts. When my mother died of cancer and the bills nearly bankrupted him, he didn't ask for help." His voice rose. "And now, at 96 years old, when his heart is failing, when he can barely walk, when he needs oxygen just to breathe, the country he bled for is charging him $150 for trying not to die in a parking lot." Nobody was prepared for what came out of James Sullivan's mouth next. "Your Honor." His voice was barely audible. Everyone leaned forward. "I'm not afraid to die. I've been ready since Normandy. Lived on borrowed time for 79 years. He looked up at Judge Caprio, tears streaming down his weathered face. "But I am afraid of dying alone. My son drove 3 hours to bring me to this appointment. 3 hours because he loves me, because he didn't want me driving alone anymore." His hand found Michael's, gripped it with what little strength remained. When that pain hit, when I thought my heart was exploding, my only thought was, "Please, God, let me see my son one more time. Let me get inside where someone can help, where Michael won't find me dead in a parking lot." The silence that followed lasted 17 seconds. Someone in the gallery was crying openly. Judge Caprio stood up. For the first time in his 37 years on the bench, he left his chair during active testimony, walked down from the platform. Every eye followed him. He knelt beside James Sullivan's wheelchair, put his hand on the old soldier's shoulder. "Mr. Sullivan, can you look at me?" James lifted his eyes. "This country owes you a debt that can never be repaid." The judge's voice was thick with emotion. "What you did on that beach, what you've done every day since, the price you've paid in nightmares and pain and watching friends die, we can never give back what you gave us." He stood, turned to face the courtroom. "This parking ticket is dismissed. Completely. Not deferred. Not reduced. Dismissed." His voice grew stronger. "And I want it noted in the record that any enforcement officer who issues a citation to a veteran experiencing a medical emergency at a VA hospital should be personally reviewed by this court." The prosecutor started to speak. Judge Caprio held up his hand. "I'm not finished." He walked back to his bench, pulled out his wallet. "Mr. Sullivan, your son drove 3 hours to bring you here. That means he's going to drive 3 hours back." He counted out bills, walked back down. "This is $80. I want you to take a taxi home, a comfortable one, with a driver who'll help you to your door." He pressed the money into James's shaking hands. "You've given enough. You don't owe this city your time or your strength or one more minute of hardship." The courtroom erupted. People standing, applauding. Some were crying. The prosecutor looked at his shoes. But Michael Sullivan wasn't done. "Your Honor, may I say something?" "Of course. There are hundreds of veterans like my father, maybe thousands, getting tickets at VA hospitals across the country, getting fined for being sick, for being old, for having emergencies." His voice strengthened. "This needs to change." Judge Caprio nodded slowly. "You're right. And I'll make sure the hospital administration hears about this case. I'll make sure the parking enforcement company reviews their policies. But more than that," he looked directly at James, "I'll make sure everyone knows what happened here today. How a 96-year-old D-Day veteran was treated. Because shame is a powerful teacher." 3 weeks later, the VA hospital in Providence announced a new policy. Any veteran experiencing a medical emergency would have all parking citations automatically dismissed. No questions asked, no court appearance required. Just present medical records. The parking enforcement company was replaced with hospital staff who understood that sick people sometimes make mistakes, who understood that emergencies don't wait for proper parking procedures. And James Sullivan? He lived another 14 months, long enough to see his great-granddaughter born, long enough to tell her about Omaha Beach, about the friends he lost, about the country he loved despite its flaws. His son Michael framed the dismissed parking ticket, hung it in his living room. Not as a souvenir, but as a reminder. A reminder that justice exists, that compassion exists, that sometimes, when the system fails, one person with courage can make it right. Your subscription literally determines if these stories reach people who need hope. If Judge Caprio's courage moves you, hit subscribe and notification bell right now. We're building an army for justice. Judge Caprio never mentioned the money he gave James Sullivan. Never brought it up again. But word spread through Providence, through the veteran community, through social media. A judge who didn't just dismiss a ticket, who reached into his own pocket to help a hero get home safely. The story reached the American Legion, the VFW, news outlets across the country. Not because Judge Caprio wanted publicity, but because James Sullivan's son made sure everyone knew. Made sure every veterans organization heard about the judge who knelt beside a wheelchair, who touched an old soldier's shoulder, who said the words every veteran needs to hear. Your country owes you a debt that can never be repaid. Imagine if every courtroom operated this way. Imagine if every judge saw the person, not just the violation, saw the story, not just the statute. Judge Caprio retired 2 years after this case. At his retirement party, Michael Sullivan showed up, brought his daughter, James's granddaughter, brought a photograph from D-Day. Young men, boys really, grinning at the camera before they stormed the beach. James Sullivan was second from the left, 19 years old, whole life ahead of him, not knowing that 6 hours later, 3 of those boys would be dead. Your Honor, Michael said, presenting the photo. My father wanted you to have this. He said you reminded him why he fought, why he survived, because he believed in an America where justice means something, where compassion means something, where doing the right thing matters more than following the wrong rule. The judge accepted the photo, studied those young faces, those boys who became heroes. Your father was an extraordinary man. He was an ordinary man who did extraordinary things, Michael corrected gently. Just like you, Your Honor. Just like you. You've just heard how one judge changed everything for one veteran. But James Sullivan's case changed policies that affected 1,200 veterans. 1,200 families who no longer have to choose between medical care and unfair fines. 1,200 stories of dignity restored. Subscribe to spread this vision of justice. Like this video if you felt something. Comment your city below. Let's show the world we demand compassion in our courts. Share this with someone who's lost faith in the system. Because here's the truth that nobody talks about. Our veterans come home broken, not just physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. They give us pieces of themselves that can never be put back together. And then we fine them for parking wrong while having heart attacks. James Sullivan survived D-Day, survived the Battle of the Bulge, survived decades of nightmares and survivor's guilt. But he almost didn't survive a parking lot. Think about that. Really think about it. A man who stormed the most heavily defended beach in history, who faced machine guns and artillery and watched his friends die, almost lost his life in a parking lot because he forgot to display a placard during a heart attack. And the system, the bureaucratic, unfeeling system, didn't care. Didn't check if he was okay. Didn't ask why his car was still there. Just wrote the ticket and moved on. But Judge Frank Caprio cared. He saw past the violation to the man, past the rule to the reason, past the law to the justice. That's the America James Sullivan fought for. Not the perfect one in propaganda posters. The real one. The one where people make mistakes and systems fail, but individuals with courage step up and make things right. 3 days before James Sullivan died, his son visited him in hospice. The old soldier was mostly unconscious by then, barely there. But Michael leaned close and whispered, "Dad, remember when Judge Caprio dismissed your ticket? Remember how he knelt beside your wheelchair?" That story reached the White House. They're naming a VA parking policy after you. The Sullivan Rule. No veteran will ever be fined for an emergency again. James opened his eyes, just for a moment, smiled, squeezed his son's hand, and closed his eyes for the last time. He died knowing he'd made a difference. One last mission accomplished. Not with a rifle on a beach, but with a story in a courtroom. Proof that battles for justice happen everywhere. That heroes aren't just made in war. They're made in the quiet moments when someone with power chooses compassion over convenience. Judge Caprio came to the funeral, stood in the back, didn't want attention, just wanted to pay respects. When Michael saw him, he walked over. "Thank you for coming, Your Honor." "I had to." The judge looked at the flag-draped casket. "Men like your father are why I do what I do. Why I believe the law should serve justice, not replace it." They stood together in silence. Two men who understood that doing the right thing sometimes means breaking the rules. That mercy and justice aren't opposites. That compassion is the highest form of patriotism. If you believe in this kind of justice, we need you. Subscribe now. Share this story. Comment below with your own experiences fighting unfair systems. Let's build something bigger than ourselves. Because somewhere right now, another veteran is getting a ticket for being sick. Another elderly person is choosing between medication and food. Another family is drowning in bureaucratic cruelty disguised as policy. And they need to know that people like Judge Caprio exist, that justice still lives, that their story matters. James Sullivan's story mattered. It changed laws, changed policies, changed how 1,200 veterans are treated. And it started with one moment. One judge willing to see a person instead of a case number. Your engagement with this video, your subscription, your shares, they matter. They determine whose stories get told, whose injustices get exposed, whose lives get changed. Be part of this movement. Subscribe, like, comment, share. Not for the algorithm. For James Sullivan. For every veteran who comes home broken and gets treated like a problem instead of a hero. For every elderly person struggling to survive in a system designed to extract their last dollar. For every family fighting battles nobody should have to fight. This is more than a YouTube channel. This is a movement for justice, for dignity, for remembering that laws serve people, not the other way around. And it starts with you. Right now, this moment. Hit that subscribe button. Ring that notification bell. Let's make sure stories like James Sullivan's don't just inspire us. Let's make sure they change us. Because that's what Judge Caprio did. He didn't just dismiss a ticket. He restored dignity. He honored sacrifice. He showed us what justice looks like when it's tempered with mercy. That's the America worth fighting for. The one James Sullivan believed in when he was 19 on Omaha Beach. The one he still believed in at 96 in that courtroom. And that's the America we're building here. One story at a time, one subscription at a time, one act of justice at a time. Welcome to the movement. Subscribe now. James Sullivan's story is just the beginning.